Good morning, everyone. My name is Arpan Banerjee. I'm a doctoral fellow here at the Department of East Asian Studies and also academic counselor here at IGNOU. And I've been teaching you this paper. The name of this paper is Administrative System in BRICS, and its code is BPAE 143. So let us begin today's class. I welcome you all to today's learning session. Let us begin today's class. So we have been discussing the first block of this paper, which is regarding the constitutional framework and structure of government in BRICS. The first unit of this first block it consisted of the constitutional framework in the BRICS nation, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That we've already discussed, and also we've discussed the legislative system in the BRICS nations. In the second unit, that also we've discussed. So in today's class, we are going to discuss the executive and the judiciary in the BRICS countries. That is the third and the fourth unit. So we'll be finishing with this first block today. So let us begin with our third unit, that is the executive system in the BRICS nations. So as we all know that across the world, there are very few different types of executives that are prevailing in the different countries. So if you see the executive structure in the different countries, no matter what the form of government is, whether it is democracy, whether it is monarchy, whether it is one party rule, whether it is parliamentary democracy or presidential or semi-presidential, no matter what is the type of government, if you see the structure of the executive apparatus, then you will come across only a few different types of models, of the executive apparatus. So the most common types of executive, if we see across the world, they are the presidential system, which prevails in countries like the United States of America. Then you have the parliamentary type of executive, which is here in our nation. Then there is a singular executive, which can be found, you can say, in those nations where there is one party rule or there is a dictator who is ruling. Then there is a system of plural executives, right? Something that you can find in countries like Switzerland, where there is not one head of state but rather multiple heads of states. The same system can be found in countries like Bosnia Herzegovina as well. Now, another type of executive is the nominal executive and the real executive. So, if you see, even in our country, the nominal head of the executive is the President of India, but the real head of the executive is the Prime Minister of India, because the Prime Minister is the elected executive. President is also elected, but indirectly elected. The Prime Minister is the directly elected executive. So, in our parliamentary democracy, the Prime Minister is the real head of the executive, and the President is the nominal head of the executive at the union level. Same at the state level, if you see, the Chief Minister is the real head of the executive, and the Governor is the nominal head of the executive. So there are certain elected executives, if you see. For example, in our nation, the Prime Minister, or at the state level, the Chief Ministers, they are elected executives, directly elected. Then there are nominated executives like the members of the Rajya Sabha. Although they are a part of the legislature, but they can also assume executive roles as well, right? So there are nominated executives as well. And of course, there are dictatorial executives as well, that we all know. So in majority of the countries, there are separate heads of the state and heads of the government. In our country, the same structure prevails. The Prime Minister is the head of the government and the President is the head of the state. If you go to the To countries like the United Kingdom, the king there is the head of the state and the prime minister. The elected prime minister is the head of the government. And in some countries, if we find that there is a single incumbent who is holding both these positions simultaneously. So that incumbent is the head of the state as well and the head of the government as well. In very few states, mostly in dictatorial and autocratic kind of structures, you can find it. In monarchies that can be found. So, similarly, there are directly elected chiefs also in a large number of countries. So, let us begin today's class by discussing the executive apparatus in the first country of BRICS, that is Brazil. So, Brazil, it has a federal presidential constitutional republic. That is the official term. And this federal presidential constitutional republic in Brazil, it is based on a representative democracy. So in this representative democracy, the president heads the executive branch of the government. And also the president is the commander-in-chief of the Brazilian armed forces, similar to our nation. In our country as well, the president of India is the commander-in-chief of the Indian armed forces. So the Brazilian executive, it consists of the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. And there are certain other prominent bodies as well, which are part of this executive. They are the councils. Now, what are these councils? They are the Council of the Republic and the National Defense Council. So the president of Brazil, he acts as head of the state, the head of the government, as well as the head of administration as well. And as per the intent of the Brazilian constitution, the president of Brazil, on taking over the office, the president of Brazil has the duty to uphold the integrity and independence of Brazil, and also to present a plan of the government with program priorities, and also a bill with budget guidelines and proposals. So it is obligatory upon the executive branch to enforce the laws which are prepared by the legislative branch. But the president of Brazil can also initiate this process. So if we see the office of the president of Brazil, it may also grant pardons, and it also has the power to commute legal sentences similar to our nation by replacing a severe punishment imposed on the defendant with one that is more flexible. Our president also enjoys the same power. So the president of Brazil enjoys vast powers, such as to manage the troops, creation of public offices, laws and matters relating to civil services, to appoint and dismiss ministers, and also initiate legislations for public interest, and also to exercise other powers which are provided in the Brazilian constitution. And the president of Brazil can also delegate these powers to subordinate agencies as well. Now, if you see the vice president of Brazil, the vice president of Brazil is elected along with the president, who is registered with him. So quite similar to that in the United States. So the vice president and the president and the vice president, they are both elected together in the United States. The vice president of Brazil will assume the office of president when the president is abroad. So the role of the vice president of Brazil is to assist the president of Brazil whenever the need arises. So if you see, the tenure of the vice president of Brazil is coterminous with the president of Brazil, which is 4 years. The cabinet ministers, they play important role in running the executive wing of the government. And ministers, they are at the apex of one or the other department. And they also enjoy various autonomous powers as well to run the administration relating to financial, administrative, and technical aspects. So, the ministers in Brazil, the cabinet ministers, they are also responsible for establishing the strategies, the guidelines, and also the priorities for the use of public resources, such as creating standards and monitoring and evaluating federal program. All these things are done by the cabinet ministers, and these ministers, they are chosen by the president of the republic, that is the president of Brazil. Uh, and only the head of the Ministry of State for Defense is restricted to native born Brazilians. So, in order to become the head of the Ministry of State for Defense, one has to be a native born Brazilian. So, the candidate for the ministerial berth must be above the age of 21 years and should possess their full political rights. So, in our country, in order to become a minister at the union level, one has to be more than 25 years old, because if you're not 25 years old, then you cannot get elected as a member of parliament. So, in order to be a minister, you have to be a member of parliament. So, that is a significant difference in our country and in Brazil. That in Brazil, a minister can be, one can become a minister at the age of 21, and in our country, it is 25. So these ministers, these cabinet ministers, they are responsible for the coordination and supervision of the federal organs and also the administrative entities which fall in their area of responsibility. Now, let us discuss the executive in Russia. So, executive power in the Russian Federation, it shall be exercised by the government of the Russian Federation. This is clearly elucidated in the constitution of Russia. So the government of the Russian Federation, it shall consist of the chairman of the government of the Russian Federation, deputy chairman of the government of Russian Federation, and also federal ministers as well. These are the things which are clearly elucidated in the constitution of the Russian Federation. And as per the Russian constitution, Russia has been declared as a federal semi-presidential republic, quite similar to the system that exists in France and in Sri Lanka. So, under a semi-presidential structure, the president and the prime minister, they share the governing responsibilities as head of the state and head of the government respectively. And the president, however, holds more powers than the prime minister. And as a universal practice, all the three branches of government, they share the responsibilities of running the administration of the country. The president, who is the executive head, is elected by the citizens on the basis of universal, equal, and direct suffrage by secret ballot for a 6-year term. So, only I think a few weeks ago, Vladimir Putin was again elected as for another 6-year term. So he's been in office since the last 2.5 decades. So the office of president is limited to 2 consecutive terms. However, the constitutional changes that were brought in by Vladimir Putin in July 2020, that extended the present term, his present term, which ended in 2024, and now he has again been elected for 6 years till 2030. So this constitutional changes of July 2020, that has extended the present term of both the president as well as the prime minister for another 2 terms of 6 years each. So from till 2036, which means that both the president of Russia and the prime minister of Russia, they will remain in power till 2036. So, as per Article 83 of the Russian Constitution, the president of Russia enjoys a number of significant powers in relation to the executive. Now, what are those significant powers? They include appointing powers, controlling powers, policy related powers, military powers, and also judicial powers. So, above all, the president of Russia is the guarantor of the Russian constitution and also of human and civil rights and liberties. So, the president of Russia is the protector of sovereignty, independence, and integrity of the state of Russia. And also, the president of Russia ensures the concerted functioning and interaction of all bodies of state power. So, in this capacity of the head of the state, the president of Russia performs all ceremonial functions. And the president of Russia is also the face of the state inside and outside the country. So the president of Russia has the all important power to appoint the chairman of the government, and it is the president of Russia only who nominates the chairman with the consent of the State Duma. So the president of Russia also has the power to nominate or remove the chairman of the federal bank with the consent of the State Duma, that is the parliament. And the deputy chairman as well as the ministers, they are also appointed by the president of Russia. And besides this, the president of Russia also appoints ambassadors to different countries with which Russia has diplomatic ties. So you can see it is a far-fetched responsibilities have been assigned to the president of Russia, and his powers are also quite varied. So it's a very powerful post, the president of Russia. And in relation to the judiciary, the president of Russia also makes recommendations to appoint the. It also makes recommendations to the Federal Council of Russia to appoint judges of the Constitutional Court of Russia, the Supreme Court of Russia, as well as the Supreme Court of Arbitration. So the judges of these courts are also appointed by the president. And also in regard to the appointment or removal of the Prosecutor General of Russian Federation, the president makes recommendations to the Federal Council. So the president is elected for a term of 5 years, and the president may be re-elected for another term as well. So the president can resign or can be removed as per the procedure that is mentioned in Article 61 of the Russian Constitution. As far as the powers and functions of the Russian president is concerned, there's a long list that is provided in the Constitution, and there are. So there are the president of Russia has executive powers, has legislative powers, has judicial powers, has financial powers, as well as emergency powers. So the executive powers of the president of Russia, they include the power of making major appointments and removals that we have already discussed. So these are some of the powers that we had discussed. So now let us discuss the executive in India. So we have discussed the executive in Russia, the appointment and removal powers. Now let us discuss the executive in India. So India, as we all know, has adopted a parliamentary system of government. And this parliamentary system of government, it provides for a nominal and real executive. So the parliament, the ultimate accountability of the executive is in the hands of the Parliament of India. as per Article 75, Clause 3, if the Parliament passes a no confidence motion, the lower house, that is the Lok Sabha, passes a no confidence motion against this incumbent government, and the incumbent government is not able to win the confidence of the Lok Sabha, then the Prime Minister and his cabinet has to resign. So that is there in Article 75, Clause 3, and that you can say it acts as a cornerstone of India's parliamentary system of government. And this parliamentary system of government, it provides for a nominal and real executive. So the President of India, in this case, is the head of state and is considered as the nominal head. So as per Article 53 of the Constitution of India, the executive power of the Indian Union, it is vested in the President of India. And this executive power is exercisable by the President of India either directly or through his subordinate officers. So in addition to this, Article 77 of the Constitution of India, it also indicates that all executive actions of the government, they are expected to be taken in the name of the President of India. So the President of India is elected for a term of 5 years and can be re-elected as well. However, only one president, that is the first President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, he is the only president who has been re-elected for another term. Apart from him, no other president has served 2 terms in our country. So the President of India can resign or can be removed as per the procedure that is mentioned in the Article 61 of the Constitution. However, no president till date has ever been impeached. Impeachment provisions are also there in the Constitution, but no president has ever been impeached. And as far as the powers and the functions of the President of India are concerned, there's a long list of powers and functions which have been entrusted to the President by the Constitution of India. Now let us see what are those, how these powers and functions have been classified by the Constitution of India. So similar to the Russian president, the Indian president also has executive powers, has legislative powers, judicial powers have also been entrusted, financial powers and emergency powers as well. So if we talk about the executive powers of the president, they include the power of making major appointments and removals. And also it includes the appointment of the Prime Minister of India, as well as other union ministers as well. And also the power to appoint the Comptroller and Auditor General of India as well as the Attorney General of India, the judges of the Supreme Court, as well as the high courts at the provincial levels, the chairman and members of the Union Public Service Commission, they are also appointed by the president, and also the Chief Election Commissioner, as well as the other members of the Election Commission or the Deputy Commissioners, as well as the members of various other bodies, they are appointed by the President of India. And the President of India also has certain formal powers to control the administration of the union government as well as the union territories, which are directly under the jurisdiction of the union government. And the president also has the power to issue directions to the state governors or to seek any information from the state governments. So these powers are also there. And if we talk about the legislative front, the President of India, she has a number of powers in relation to the Lok Sabha. For example, there are certain money bills, which are types of financial bills. These bills, they cannot be introduced to the Parliament without the approval of the President. So another legislative power that has been entrusted to the President is that the President has the power to summon, prorogue, and dissolve the Lok Sabha. And also she has the right to address the House. So at the beginning of every year, the first session of the Parliament that is held in India, it's called the budget session. before that session begins, the President of India gives an address, and only after that the budget is presented. The President of India nominates certain types of members in various government bodies. For example, even in the Rajya Sabha, if you see in the upper house of the Indian Parliament, the President has the power to nominate 12 people, 12 eminent personalities. The President also gives assent to the bills which have been passed by the Parliament. And herein we should discuss a very important thing, that the President of India, if a bill has been passed by both the houses of the Parliament, that is the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and if it goes to the President of India for her assent, then the President of India can reject that bill only once. But if it is again passed by both the houses and again sent to the President for her approval, then she has to give her approval. However, there is a cliche here, is that the President of India, there is no time limit that is mentioned in the Constitution. There is no time limit within which the President of India has to give her approval if a bill is sent back second time. So in this case, the President can withhold her assent for as long as she wants. So this is called the pocket veto. So this is also exercised by the President, the pocket veto. So the President also has the power to pardon death sentences as well. So now let us discuss the role of the Vice President. So the Vice President in our country is elected simultaneously with the President of India. However, in case of the President of India, the collegium that elects the President of India, it consists of the members of both houses of Parliament as well as elected members of all the legislative assemblies. Okay. However, the Vice President, in case of the election of the Vice President, the collegium is limited. It consists of only the elected members of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. So even the nominated members of the Rajya Sabha, they are also not eligible to vote for the Vice Presidential post. And the Vice President of India, as we all know, is elected simultaneously with the President of India in a manner and procedure that is followed for the election of the President. So the only deviation is that the members of the state assemblies, state legislative assemblies, they do not vote for the office of the Vice President. So the Vice President of India is elected for a 5-year term and can be re-elected for second tenure as well. So only 2 Vice Presidents have so far been re-elected. The first was Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan was also re-elected. And the second was Hamid Ansari. So the Vice President of India is also the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha, that is the upper house. And the Vice President of India can be removed by a resolution of the Rajya Sabha, which is then passed in majority and approved by the Lok Sabha as well. So as we have all discussed, that the Vice President is the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha, and in case there is a vacancy in the office of the President, then the Vice President can also officiate as President as well. For example, there are many such examples where the Vice President has officiated as the President of India, wherein the President of India passed away and the Vice President had to discharge the functions of the President of India. So the Prime Minister of India is the real head of the executive, and The prime minister is called the first among equals, primus inter pares. So this is the term that is used, the first among equals. And the prime minister of India stands at the apex of the government. And the prime minister of India enjoys supreme command over the executive. And the prime minister of India is appointed by the president of India on becoming the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha. And all executive powers, they are formally vested in the president of India, but these are to be exercised only with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, and the head of the Council of Ministers is the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister, being the head of the Council of Ministers, enjoys all these powers in equal practice. So the Prime Minister has multiple roles as the administrative head, the political chief executive, and the leader of the Lok Sabha. So we have discussed the executive system in India. Now let us discuss the executive in China. So the executive setup in the People's Republic of China is theoretically headed by the premier, who is the Prime Minister of China, and also the head of the government, and also the heads of the state council as well. So, however, in actual practice, if you see, the president of the People's Republic of China, that is right now it is Xi Jinping. He is also the head of the Communist Party of China, and he is the one who plays the real role of being the overall chief. So the president and vice president of the People's Republic of China, they are elected by the National People's Congress of China. And to be elected as the president of or China or as the vice president of China, the candidate must not be less than 45 years of age and should possess the right to vote in China. So in our countries it is 35, but in China it is 45. So the term of office of the president and vice president of China, the same as that of the National People's Congress, that is 5 years. And though the term of president is 5 years, but it is renewable and there are no term limits as of now. And so the president of China is president for life. This was done in 2018 by Xi Jinping. So now let us discuss the executive system in South Africa. So South Africa, as we all know, it is a constitutional democracy and its system of government is based on the parliamentary republic. And there's a three-tier system of national, provincial, local levels of government in South Africa, which is based on the Constitution of South Africa. And one stated mission of the Constitution of South Africa is that the country, it should be run on the system of cooperative governance. So the executive authority in South Africa, it is vested in the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, right now is the President of South Africa, and also in the Deputy President. So the Vice President is called the Deputy President, and there are certain cabinet ministers as well. So these are the people who wield executive authority in South Africa, and the Constitution, it explicitly states that South Africa, it shall be run on the system of cooperative governance. So the President of South Africa is also the head of the state and as well as the head of the government. So the President of South Africa is elected by the members of the National Assembly, which is the lower house of the Parliament of South Africa. And from amongst the members only, the President is elected by the members of the National Assembly. And once these members are elected, and once a person is elected as the President of South Africa, then that person has to resign as the member of the National Assembly. So the President of South Africa is elected for a 5-year term, and which can be renewed only once. So South African President is also the head of the state, the head of the government, as well as the commander-in-chief. And as per the Constitution of South Africa, it is the first and foremost responsibility of the President of South Africa to work for the nation and also to uphold and protect the respect and dignity of the Constitution of South Africa. And also, the President of South Africa has been entrusted with the power to appoint members of the cabinet as well, and also the power to distribute portfolios to the members of the cabinet, and also to call for the meetings of the cabinet as well, and make other important appointments as well. And the President of South Africa also has the power to appoint the commanders of the armed forces of South Africa, also to issue directions, and also to direct and control the central administration in South Africa, and also look after the foreign affairs of South Africa, and appoint the ambassadors to the different nations, and also designate the South African representatives in other countries, and also to receive foreign dignitaries as well. So the President of South Africa also enjoys certain legislative and judicial powers as well. So, for instance, his signatures are required on the bills that are passed by the National Assembly. And the President of South Africa also has the power to refer back certain bills to the legislature for reconsideration. And also, the President of South Africa may forward a bill to the Constitutional Court for the verdict as well. So, the President of South Africa also has the power to appoint judges in consultation with the Judicial Service Commission. So, we have discussed the executive system in the BRICS countries. Now, let us discuss the judicial system in the BRICS countries. So, the judiciary, the term judiciary, it originates from the Latin word judex, which means to guess or judge. So, the judiciary represents the judicial system of a nation. Of the three branches of government, judiciary is that branch of government which interprets law of the land and also acts as guardians of the citizens' rights. So Lord Bryce, he has rightly pointed out that there is no better test of the excellence of a government than the efficiency and independence of the judicial system. So in all the countries, we may find a well-developed judicial setup with some variations, depending upon the governmental setup as well as the ideological foundations of the country. So in most of the countries of the world, if you see, some form of hierarchical setup of courts, it does exist. And this hierarchical setup, it facilitates the system of appeals and reviews. So let us start by discussing the judicial apparatus in Brazil. So in Brazil, the judiciary, the judicial setup, it is a multifaceted system which operates on the state and federal levels, almost like the United States judicial system. So Brazil, it has adopted a well-developed judicial system, and going by the civil law traditions, the judicial system of Brazil, it divides cases into different jurisdictions. So the major judicial jurisdictions involve various organs to dispense justice in Brazil. Now, what are these various organs which dispense justice in Brazil? So the first is the Supremo Tribunal Federal, which is also called the Supreme Court of Justice. The second such institution is the Superior Tribunal de Justicia, which is the Superior Court of Justice. And the third is the Tribunal Regionae Federai, which is regional federal courts. So the Tribunal Regionae Federais, it deals with the cases in which union or federal public companies are involved, except for those that are related to bankruptcy, work accidents, or those that are covered by other courts. So labor courts, in Brazil, they deal with matters relating to employer-employee relations and conflicts. So electoral courts in Brazil, they regenerate the electoral procedures in Brazil, such as organizing, pervading, as well as regulating the entire electoral process. So the military courts, they deal with matters relating to disputes and crimes in the military. And these military courts, which are similar to what we have in our country, it is called the court martial system. In the military courts in Brazil, they are composed of military judges. So further, above these courts, there are higher courts such as the Superior Labor Court, the Superior Electoral Court, the Superior Military Court, in addition to the Superior Court of Justice and Supreme Federal Court. So the state courts, they are organized in each state and federal district, and these state courts, they deal with the appeals in reference to civil and criminal matters, and which do not fall under the jurisdiction of the federal labor, electoral or military courts. So in general, if you see, there are three levels of appeal at regional, state and federal level, and there are two broad sets of courts as well: legal courts or ordinary courts that deal with matters relating to the state civil and criminal cases, and also there's a second set of special courts which are related to military, electoral, labor and other specific areas. So we've discussed the judicial apparatus in Brazil. Now let us move on to the judicial apparatus in Russia. So the existing judicial system of Russia, it is the outcome of judicial reforms which were carried out in the post-Soviet era in the 1990s, with the purpose to have judicial power in the state as an independent branch of power. So these efforts, they were based on the promise that in a democratic setup, which is based on the rule of law, it is required to have independent and competent law courts. So judicial reforms of Russia, they found their place in the Constitution of Russian Federation as well in 1993. So this was the post-Soviet era when Boris Yeltsin was the president of Russia. So the Russian judicial system, it comprises of the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court as the highest judicial bodies. And there is also third apex court as well, which is called the High Court of Arbitration, which is at the top of the arbitration court system. So there is a single constitutional court. The regular court system is under the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, it is at the apex of ordinary courts and also at the system of commercial courts. So as per the federal constitutional law in Russia, the number of court judges is 170, and they're headed by the Chief Justice. So in our country, if you see, the Supreme Court right now has 31 judges. But in Russia, the number is 170. So the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Russia Federation is appointed by the Council of the Federal Assembly on the proposal of the President of Russia for a 6-year term. So the Supreme Court of Russia is the highest court for civil, criminal, administrative and economic cases. And as a court of first instance, the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, it looks into the cases relating to actions of the President of Russia, the government of Russian Federation, the Central Election Commission of Russia, as well as other public authorities which are there at the federation level. So the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, it also takes up cases relating to economic and other disputes between federal authorities and other constituent entities. So as a court of second instance, that is as an appellate court, the Federal Supreme Court, it looks into the legal validity of the decisions of the Supreme Courts of constituent entities of Russian Federation, and also reviews the decisions of the military courts. So there are regional and other courts also in Brazil. So below the Supreme Court of in Russia, so below the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, there are regional courts as well, which include the Supreme Court of the Republics of Russia, the city courts of the federal cities of Russia, that is Moscow and St. Petersburg, and also the courts of autonomous areas. So these courts they sit as both courts of first instance and appellate courts. So we have discussed the judicial system in Brazil and Russia. Now let us move on to the judicial apparatus which prevails in India. So if you see judiciary in our country, it is considered as the watchdog of democracy and also as the guardian of the Constitution of India. So the Indian judiciary it administers a common law system in which customs, securities, and legislation all codify the law of the land. So judiciary in India it is free from direct executive and legislative influence to ensure impartial and independent judiciary. So the judicial system of India it finds its roots in the ancient times, and it has been shaped by the rulers of different times before independence. And with the adoption of the constitution, the foundation of the present Indian judicial system was laid down. So India it has a single integrated judicial system. So India has a single integrated judicial system which is structured like a pyramid, and it has been classified into three levels with subsidiary parts. So the Supreme Court is at the top national level, followed by the high courts, which are there at the state level, and the lower courts, which are there at the district level, as well as subordinate courts, which are there at the sub district level. Apart from that, there are family courts as well. So the lower courts in India they include district and sessions courts, and also metropolitan courts as well for the cities which have a population of more than 10 lakh. So the district courts they deal with civil matters, and these district courts they are headed by district judge. And under the district courts for civil matters, there exists a sub court as well, senior civil judge and principal junior civil judge court as well, principal senior civil judge. So for criminal cases at the district level, there exists sessions court under the sessions judge. Under the sessions court, there are judicial magistrate court of the first class, so the chief judicial magistrate, and also judicial magistrate court of the second class, that is chief judicial magistrate. Besides the ordinary court, there are large number of tribunals also that operate in different areas or sectors. For example, regarding the interstate water disputes, tribunals have been created. And also, as per Article 323 Clause A, there are administrative tribunals as well relating to the bureaucracy. So that is there. If you see the Supreme Court of India, it is at the apex of the Indian judicial system. And the Supreme Court of India, it came into being with the commencement of the Constitution of India on 26th January 1950. However, if you see in 1935, the British government, it created through the government of India Act 1935, the British Raj, it created what was then called the Federal Court of India. So this Federal Court of India, that only became the Supreme Court of India. However, it was not yet the highest court of appeal. The highest court of appeal was the Privy Council of the Emperor. However, after independence, that was pre-independence, the Privy Council of the Emperor was the highest court of appeal in India as well. However, post-independence, the Supreme Court of India it became the highest court of appeal. And if you go even back in 1773, if you see the Britishers, they had created what was called the Supreme Court of Calcutta. So that is the history of the Supreme Court. So under Article 124 of the Indian Constitution, the Supreme Court of India has been established, and the Parliament of India has the power to make laws regulating the constitution and organization of the Supreme Court of India. The number of judges was 7 in the beginning, which was raised to 10 in 1956, and this number it was raised subsequently to meet the increased workload. Presently, the Supreme Court consists of 1 Chief Justice and 33 judges, as per the 2019 amendment. Before this amendment, the Supreme Court had 30 judges, including the Chief Justice. Now let us discuss the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court. So the Chief Justice and other judges, they are appointed by the President of India. So for the appointment of Chief Justice, the President consults other concerned authorities besides taking advice of the Council of Ministers. The President can consult such other judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court as she deems necessary. So, for the appointment of other judges of the Supreme Court, the President consults the Chief Justice of India. So, the Chief Justice of India has the power, with the previous consent of the President, to request a retired judge of the Supreme Court or a High Court judge to work as an ad hoc judge under Article 127 for some period, and if there is a lack of quorum of the permanent judges. So now let us discuss the qualifications. So according to Article 124, a person for appointment as a judge of the Supreme Court must possess the following qualifications. That person must be a citizen of India, and that person should have worked as a judge in some high court for at least 5 years, or he should have practiced in a high court for at least 10 years, or in the opinion of the President, is a distinguished jurist. So, in case of the Chief Justice of India, uh, normally the senior most judge of the Supreme Court is promoted for that post. So, now let us discuss the tenure of the Chief Justice of India. So, no minimum age is prescribed for the appointment of a judge of the Supreme Court, and no fixed date of office has also been mentioned. So, a judge of the Supreme Court ceases to be so on occurring of any one of the following circumstances. So, on attaining the age of 65 years, a judge of the Supreme Court ceases to be a judge. On his resigning his office by writing address to the President, and also on being removed through impeachment. So, according to Article 124, Clause 4 of the Indian Constitution, the judges, they can only be removed by a set of removal legislation. So, the President and Parliament, they are also involved in this procedure of removal, and on the grounds of incapacity. Somewhat complicated method has been prescribed to ensure that judges are not removed easily, thereby ensuring the independence of judiciary. So the judges of the Supreme Court, once appointed, cannot be removed by the executive orders. So there are high courts also in India. A high court, it stands at the top of every state's judicial system, even though it forms a part of the single integrated judicial system headed by the Supreme Court of India. The Constitution of India, it provides for establishment of high courts in all the states. So the Parliament by law may establish common high court for two or more states. For example, Punjab and Haryana, they have a common high court. And the Parliament can also extend the jurisdiction of a high court to a union territory or exclude such jurisdiction. For example, the Calcutta High Court has jurisdiction over the union territory of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So that we have discussed that Punjab, Haryana, and Assam and Meghalaya, they have common high courts. And the jurisdiction of Punjab and Haryana High Court also there in the Union Territory of Chandigarh. So there are 25 high courts in India. So these are the things that we have discussed, that the High Court also has original jurisdiction in India, that is in matters of admiralty, probate, matrimony, and contempt of court cases. And also there is appellate jurisdiction as well, which extends to civil and criminal cases. Now let us discuss the judiciary in China. So the legal system of the People's Republic of China, it is defined by the government as a socialist legal system, and also referred to as People's Court system. And the Constitution of China is the highest law in China. The courts in China, they administer people's justice, that is justice in the interest of the socialist aspirations of the people, rather than providing individual justice. The courts in China, they do not have general power of judicial review. However, if you see under the Administrative Procedure Law of the People's Republic of China, these courts, the Chinese courts, they have authority to invalidate any specific act or its section thereof. So China has no common law. There is no common law in China. Instead, it has civil law system which includes statutes and excludes case laws, which means court cases are not law. So, as per the independence of the judiciary is concerned, China's judiciary is subject to a variety of internal and external controls. These controls significantly limit its ability to take independent decisions. So, trying cases that have the greatest influence in China, hearing appeals against the legal decisions of higher courts, that is appellate jurisdiction, and as the court of the first instance trying the cases within its original jurisdiction. The second responsibility of Chinese courts is to supervise the working of all other courts, uh, including the special courts, overruling doubtful decision made by the court or reviewing their decision. So the Supreme People's Court in China, it also has the function of interpreting the law. Then there are higher people's courts that are created for the provinces, the autonomous regions, and the municipalities. And the internal structure of these courts is quite similar to the Supreme People's Courts. And both of them have appellate and original jurisdiction. And then there are intermediate people's courts as well, which are established for capitals or prefecture at the provincial level. And after that, there are these local people's courts at a grassroots level, which are called basic people's courts. They are at the district level. Now let us discuss the judiciary in South Africa. So the judiciary in South Africa, it is an independent branch of the government, and it is only subject only to the Constitution of South Africa and laws of the country. So the Chapter 8 of South African Constitution, it ensures independence of the courts and also makes detailed mention of the structure of judicial system in South Africa. So judicial authority in South Africa is vested in the courts through a unified judicial system. As per section 166 of the Constitution, there are following courts: the Constitutional Court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, the High Courts in South Africa, the Magistrate Court, as well as any other court that is established by an act of the Parliament of South Africa. So the Supreme Court, Constitutional Court of South Africa, it deals with the matters directly related to the Constitution of South Africa, and as per section 167 of the Constitution of South Africa, the court enjoys exclusive jurisdiction in taking up cases dealing with the powers and constitutional status by basic branches of the government. Then there are Supreme Court of Appeal in South Africa, which is the highest court dealing with cases other than those under the jurisdiction of the Constitutional Court. And this court, it consists of a president, a deputy president, and other judges. So no other court except the Constitutional Court can overrule the decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal. And there are also high courts. They can also include the hearing appeals from lower courts or other courts as per the Act of the Parliament. And these high courts in South Africa, they have jurisdiction over their own area and over the residents of that area. There are 13 high courts in total. So then there are magistrate courts, which are divided into regional courts and district courts. So these regional courts, they are divided further into two categories. That is regional magistrates court, which only deal with criminal cases, and ordinary magistrate courts, which deal with criminal and civil cases. So in today's class, we have discussed the judicial system in the BRICS nations as well as the executive system in the BRICS nations. So we are done with the first block of our paper, that is administrative system in the BRICS nation. And in the next class, we shall be starting with the second block of our paper. So in today's class, we have discussed the judicial as well as the executive system in the BRICS countries. And with that, we have finished our first block of this paper. We have discussed all the three branches in the BRICS nations. We have discussed the constitutional framework in the BRICS nation, the legislative framework in the BRICS nation, as well as the executive and judicial framework in the BRICS nation. In today's class, we did that. So that draws a close on the first unit or the first block of the paper. And in the next class, we shall be starting with the second block of the paper, that is administrative system in the BRICS nations. So thank you so much for joining today's class. Namaste.